You're recording.
Good evening, everybody. I am recording. Today is the 15th day of July, and it's about 8:33 p.m. And this is our session on House on Chelouche Street in my Israel and Middle East summer discussion club, if you want to call it that. Welcome to all the people, including some of the people who have not been here in these discussions before. And there you go. I always like to start with an open-ended comment. And I'm not going to try the poll this week, but I am going to try a chat. So first of all, I would like everybody to use the chat and just say hello. This is a way to give me...
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Jesse Waters, Greg Gutfeld, Juan Williams, and Katie Pavlik. It's 5 o'clock in New York City. This is the 5.
What is that?
I do not know what that is, but
I believe it's coming from Lori
Header thing.
Oh, sorry. I'm doing something on this end. My apologies. I didn't realize my mic was on. I'm doing something for somebody.
Oh, Lori,
right
that's you without the picture. No, okay. I thought it was.
No, my apologies. I should have showed up when I actually was clear from whatever I was doing.
Okay. So try everybody just to put in a chat. That way, first of all, I'll have a record, and we'll all. You know, the people who are helping me try to figure out how best to Zoom are saying do things like put in a chat or put in a poll to get people involved. So there you go. I like the messages. Hello from Rock Springs or whatnot.
Hello,
and I guess
upstairs.
I'll put in a chat also.
How do you chat? How do you get the typing?
There should be a button on the bottom of your screen. On some screens, Alt-H will turn on the chat, and it will open up an area on my system. It's on the right-hand side of my screen, in which it says Zoom Group Chat.
Well, mine, I don't have that. I have.
Look at the bottom.
It should be. It's usually at the bottom. In some devices, it's at the top. I don't know why.
Okay, I'll look.
Are you on your phone?
Yes.
Oh, different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
iPhones
so
are usually different.
I'm on my phone.
I think
I don't know if you can do it on an iPhone.
it's upper right, I think. You can chat. I think it's, well, on my iPad, it's upper right.
Well, this isn't an iPhone. It's just a plain old. It's
Hey,
a.
Judy.
Yeah.
Hi, Jody, and hello, Gabriella. It's good to see you.
Hey, Jody.
Hi.
Edife. Hey. Wow, Santa.
Some of us sing together.
Oh, I see what happened. Isabel, you're using a different name on your computer. Isabel, unmute. There you go.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
It's good to see you. Now I understand what's going on.
Well, hi, Seth.
Hi there, now that I can see you.
Okay.
Well, good. We've already started. We've exchanged some pleasantries. Thanks for signing in on the chat. Anybody want to get us started with anything at all about the film? Art.
Yeah. One, I was thrilled to hear Ladino. I grew up with Ladino. I got a few comments about some of the Ladino they used. Actually, their accent was very, very close to the accent that my parents used. They're from the island of Rhodes. But the subtitles, at one point, they asked somebody what he ate, and he said biscochu. And the subtitle said pie. A biscochu is not a pie, it's a biscuit. And it's one of my favorite things. My mother used to make them and I was crazy for them. A little round, hard biscuit. I don't know what was in it. It had cinnamon and other things.
It has anise in it. That's what makes it so good, distinctive.
Great. But it ain't a pie.
Arturo, did you grow up in Rhodes?
No, I was born here, but our community, on the island of Rhodes, there was a little Jewish community and a Turkish community and a Greek community, and they kept to themselves pretty much. And then when these Rhodes Jews moved to Los Angeles, that was their tradition. So they built a synagogue on 55th and Hoover, and almost everybody lived within walking distance of that synagogue.
The one in Rhodes is still there. We've been there a few times, and you can take a tour of it. And
Yeah, the lady that used to, she died now, she used to be,
I assume she did. She was old when I saw her, and that was 10 years ago.
her uncle married my aunt, so we're sort of relatives.
Wow.
She was a Holocaust survivor.
Right. And the Jewish cemetery there is fascinating because it's Sephardi custom, I guess, because I've seen this in Italy as well, to write these very flowery, like odes to the person on the grave. And some of them are in Hebrew, some are in Ladino, and some are in, or they have both Hebrew and Ladino, but the Hebrew is very poetic. I mean, there was a woman who died in childbirth, and it's, about her shrieks raised to the heavens, but the skies opened and allowed the breath of air to come to her child so that the child would live, and, that kind of thing. It went on and on. They also had inscriptions of, somebody like a doctor would have a stethoscope, or a mathematician would have something, whatever. It was really very, very.
They also have another interesting thing at that synagogue. If someone died in the Holocaust and there was no body, so they couldn't have a grave for them, they put a little plaque next to either their father or mother or a close relative. You see the grave of so-and-so, and then there's a little plaque honoring his daughter or whatever who died in the Holocaust.
Right, and then the cemetery too, they have a whole memorial for the Holocaust.
Yeah. Anyway, a little more of the Ladino. There's one scene where they're playing cards, and the winner has 3 jacks.
Right.
Yeah, 4.
Four.
But he says, Tengo mancebos.
Yes. Right.
The word mancebo is a youth in the prime of life, a healthy youth.
Wow.
Oh, and they refer to their language as Españolite. They don't say Ladino.
So what word should they have used?
No, that was a good word. I mean, what is a jack? He's not the king or queen, but he's down.
What was that? Spaniolit, you said?
Oh, you mean for the language? Actually, Españolite is more correct than Ladino.
Yeah.
It was called Españolite or Judeo-Espanol, and it was written in Hebrew.
Right.
In the late 1800s, they began writing it with the Latin alphabet, so they Latinized it. And then somehow that became the word Ladino. Ladino originally only referred to the writing of the language with the Latin alphabet, but now it's become the name of the language.
Did you grow up speaking Ladino as your mother tongue?
My parents' mother tongue, and my grandmother never learned English. A couple of my aunts could barely speak English, so we had to speak Ladino with them.
And this is in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. And in our synagogue, a lot of our services were a big part of our services were in Ladino.
Could they communicate with the Spanish-speaking population in LA?
Yeah. But, well, I'll tell you an interesting story. Our Spanish is very close to Castilian Spanish, but there's a few words that are different. On my first visit to Spain in 1957, I was in a little cantina or taverna, and there was a lady singer there, and she happened to know somebody at my table, and he invited her over, and I said, I enjoyed hearing you, and she looked at me as if I had insulted her, and I didn't know why. Several years later, I learned I used the word sentir, me gustaba sentirle, which sentir means to hear in Ladino. In Castilian, it means to feel. To tell you the rest of the story.
That would be hard to say.
Well, there are a lot of language jokes, and I hope that, Art, you get a chance to share more of the language stories and whatnot. I will point out that the director, Moshe Mizrahi, had come to Palestine, came to the land of Israel when he was about 15.
Alexandria.
He came from Alexandria, and like many people from Alexandria, He spoke Arabic, Egyptian Arabic. He probably was educated in, well, many Alexandrian Jews were educated in schools where they learned standard Arabic as well, and Ladino and French and Italian and English and God knows whatever else.
What are the kids saying? Greek?
So that community typically knew everything.
Yeah.
And part of the story of migrants to this area of Tel Aviv is the story of people who in Alexandria, which was a fairly Western city for Egypt, they were cultured, they were the highly educated, and in the land of Israel, they could not compete with the Ashkenazim for jobs, and they wound up doing people's homes and things like that, as we see the
Like the mother. Yeah.
right,
The
Al
mother.
Magor
Yeah.
character.
So we used to live in palaces in Alexandria. Now you're cleaning somebody else's floors.
Right, exactly. And some of the people on this discussion know Tel Aviv well enough. I'll show you where Chelouche Street is. I'm going to get it set up before I share the screen.
Do they still have a problem there in Tel Aviv?
They still have what?
Do they still have a problem with their identity down there?
Well, you know, it's now in 2020. It's not 1970.
48 or something.
No, it was 40. It was before
I'm sorry,
48.
well,
The British were
right.
still
The film
there.
was made in
Yeah.
73 and the setting was between 46 and 48. Let
Right.
me share the screen and I'll show you where it is. Okay, can you see the map of Tel Aviv?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see the
So
old train station.
the old train station is over here. The area where Globus Golan shot Casablanca at about the same time. And Dovi Seltzer did the music for Casablanca, and the aunt was the Maryuma character in Casablanca, and there are a few other things that were overlapping. And this is the Aron Chelouche house. And right now it's near the Susan Dalal Center. This place looks a lot nicer now than it did in those days.
But it's Nevetzedek. It's the older part of
Neve
it.
Tzedek, it's an old part of town.
Yeah,
So
it's sort of being
that's-
gentrified.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the framework of Tel Aviv.
Dr. Ward, there's a place called Norma Jean.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was named after you, Norma.
Okay.
But this is, let me make it just a little bit larger. So this is where the Chelouche house is. And the Eitzel Museum, which I don't know whether that was mentioned in the movie, but there was the idea of joining the Irgun, the Eitzel. Those mean the same thing,
About that far.
which would have been right over here. One of the few buildings, here we go, the Eitzel Museum, one of the few buildings that's left from those days. And Jaffa is over here, the clock tower and so on. So that gives you an idea as to where the movie was set.
Isn't that the area now where has a lot of the African immigrants that are the workers who've come over and refugees from Sudan in that area?
Well, there are a lot of refugees from Sudan who are coming, and Israeli state is not necessarily treating them as well as they should. But a lot of them are living in areas like that or in Jaffa, and
Right.
we'll see what happens long term. Anybody want to say something? Oh, who was Aron Chelouche? Good question. Does anybody know? So the Chelouche family is one of the leading Jewish families in Jaffa. Chelouche had an office about a block away from the clock tower and was a wealthy man. And I don't know which member of the family Aron Chelouche was, but he moved out to the Beit Tzedek and had a very nice house. But the rest of the street was not so great. And Mr. Chelouche, the Chelouche family plays no role in the movie. The only role is at the street.
It's the street. He lived from 1840. He was born in Algeria, and he lived from 1840 to 1920. Landowner, jeweler, and money changer.
Yeah. He
And
was
towards the end of the 19th century, was a major figure in Jaffa's Jewish community.
right. So he financed a lot of these things. I think he laid out some of the money for Achuzat Bayit. Name is Achuzat Bayit register with anybody?
It's like
So
a
Achuzat
stakeholder.
Bayit, what?
It's like, I'm trying to think of the word in English.
No, it's a neighborhood.
Oh, okay. I don't think it's something else.
It's a neighborhood that was laid out by Mayor Dizengoff, and within a few years, they changed the name to Tel Aviv. But Chelouche, had his finger in all the financial pots in Jaffa.
Yeah, there's also an Aaron Chelouche who's an architect. Is that?
Could be. I did not check whom the house belonged to.
Yeah, I think this may be a different one.
But Chelouche Street has to be named after Mr. Chelouche, the rich financier and jeweler and funder and whatnot.
Oh, okay. This is a picture of him, a bust of him. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Is he Egyptian?
Yeah, well, he came from around Algeria, actually. He's an Algerian Jew.
I was
Okay.
really trying to figure out how the family, how everyone who lived in those tight quarters was all related to each other.
Anybody want to help
And
us?
how they were all in each other's pockets.
I'm not sure that they were. I thought they were coming from different places. They were sort of landsmen.
Well, when Chaim was introduced, a lot of them were family members. Like they said, "This is my mother. This is my cousin.
Yeah.
This is
This
is the cousin of my cousin."
I only saw the first one.
So now you have to see the second part.
Yeah.
Exactly. They were all related. True.
Although the one who was courting the mother, if you can call it that,
Right.
The older
was
man?
interested in the mother in the first half. What
Oh,
was
the younger guy.
Niso.
Yeah, Niso, and he was just.
Is he a
wasn't
relative?
sure- So he wasn't like part of the family or like an
No, he
extended
wasn't.
family. He was just someone who was just interested in the mother, right?
Yeah.
Someone who lived in the community.
Now, remember that the feeling of the house as being stuffed with people at all times is part of the story of the film. You had an immigrant community where people were in close quarters, and that's how it was. The uncle and the aunt were, you might say, the sponsors of the Gila Almagor character, the woman who was the widow when she came, when the kid was 15 after her husband died. And her mother was there, and a few of the other people are vaguely related. And all the other people are, folks from the neighborhood or maybe living in the same building, but not the same apartment in the building or the same place in the building.
What was her relationship to the guy that owned the factory?
I think his wife was the woman that she was working for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And because she worked for the woman, the husband gave the kid the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Because the young
happened?
man, at one
Jeffrey.
point the young man said,
Jeffrey and then Mimi.
okay.
Okay. What happened to did the thugs kill the strike leader?
No.
I kind of was confused there because then I don't remember seeing him again.
No,
Yeah,
but
we
he
don't-
was breathing. They put the glasses back on him.
Yeah, and
Right.
he was fine.
Yeah.
He was, we just didn't see much of him, but no, he was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
There
Worker-
was a reference to the Casablanca era. This is a classic Israeli film about Sephardic displacement from the Casablanca era, Kazablan. I don't know what that means.
Anybody want to start singing?
Casablanca, he was from Casablanca.
Right.
Bachara, Bachara. Which song? I know them all.
Democratia.
Democracy. Kulanu Yehudim.
See, Wendy, this is the thing. Some of the people on this
know this piece.
Chat know all the pieces from Casablanca. They were written by Dovi Zeltzer, who did the music for this movie. And the movie came out at about the same time. The musical on which the movie is based, that was in the late 60s. And before that, Casablanca was a short story that was then adopted by Yigal Mozenson. He wrote the story and he wrote a straight play. And then Zeltzer and Chaim Hefer and a couple of other of the top Israeli lyricists of that era wrote the music in the 60s. And anybody who knows anything about Israeli movies knows Casablanca. It's a wonderful film. You ought to see it.
When did that come out?
The film is dated 1973, the same year.
Same year?
As this one.
Whether it's Israel or anywhere, the story of the immigrants coming over and basically sticking together is just like, in my own experience, text to sell. All the German Jews came, lots of them went to Washington Heights, and they would have people in their homes and everybody would like meet on the wall just like they did in the film. And they were like one big family, you know, supporting each other. So I just had to say that. It reminded me of that.
Makes sense.
Mimi, you wanted to say something. Can you please join in?
I just wanted to say that at one point, when he said he doesn't want to go back to work after the strike, he says, I don't want Mr. Feinstein's charity. So he probably knew that that's the reason he had the job, because of the mother's employer.
Right.
I really like that boy.
Okay.
I have a grandson that age, and he reminds me a lot of him, just, you know, just looking at the kid growing up kind of thing.
Yeah, it was really coming of age, and he was so naive.
Yeah.
Okay. Zainab, do you want to say something? I know you saw the film because you wrote me about it.
Zainab, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, sorry about that. I just said that those moral issues that those people were struggling with were very interesting to me. And when I saw that son, on the one hand, he had to go on strike, and on the other hand, he had to take care of his family. Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Farhadi's movies and the fact that people always have to choose between different situations. And in different contexts, you see that sometimes you opt for some decision that, oh, you can never understand how you came up with that decision. It was very interesting to me in that sense, in that aspect. I like the movie in general. It was very believable because at the same time, the director could show different aspects of people's character. It wasn't just like those movies that they always represent a very ideal picture of people, which is not true. Yeah, it was very believable.
Very believable.
I will just mention Asghar Farhadi is one of the most important Iranian film directors. He's made some films outside of Iran because he can't make them in Iran, but he made A Separation, which won the Oscar, and he made About Ellie and a few other films inside Iran and has gotten prizes for them.
And The Salesman also.
Salesman also got an Oscar.
Yeah. And I highly recommend, for those, sorry for interrupting, go ahead.
No, you can say this too.
No, I just wanted to say that I highly recommend watching A Separation in case that some of you haven't watched it so far. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's called A Separation, name of the movie?
Yeah.
A Separation, it's an Iranian film, and it is an important film because of all the prizes that it won. And it also deals with a lot of issues in Iranian society in a very, very compelling way in terms of separation of families, attitudes towards religion, attitudes to the elderly, attitudes towards independence. And to this day, I wonder what the young character's choice might have been at the end film. If that makes you want to watch the film.
So I really thought
Claudia.
That the young man and the librarian, the woman, I thought that he found that he was homosexual and that's what he was so upset about. And then when he came back and he said, we can't do this anymore, I didn't realize he was saying because we had sex. I thought he was inferring that he found out he was gay.
Oh.
Did anyone else think that?
No.
Claudia, you are thinking like a 21st century
Yes,
film
that's
viewer.
right. No, it was not proper to do in those days.
What
Well,
was it?
whether or not it was the proper thing to do, I don't know that the audience would have expected it. You know,
Right.
this is not history. This is a film. Now,
It's-
someone asked about the Russian-speaking person. This is a very interesting character. First of all, you need to know something about her. What do you need to know about the actress?
Who are we talking about?
The actress who played the
Librarian.
librarian.
Librarian? Okay.
Girlfriend, whatever you want to call her.
Girlfriend, bookseller, whatever.
And did she leave the community, the Jewish community? She said that she immigrated to another place because
She left her
From Russia.
husband. Yeah.
She looked like she lived in a much more upscale place. I mean, not.
Well, first of all, she did live in an upscale place. She was Shechnuzia, as we would say. She was Ashkenazi. She came from Russia. Her Hebrew was okay, but probably not reading it. She certainly did not read French. That was part of the character did not read French.
Right.
The character translated something into Russian for her own basis, just to remind you that she was from the Russian side. There may have been a comment on the Russian migration as opposed to, say, the earlier group. The Chaim character was depicted as a migrant who came during Ottoman times. Now, based on my reconstruction, he should have been about 50 years old and came to Ottoman Palestine in approximately 1914 or 1915.
15. Well, up until the war, so that was 19.
Yeah, the Ottomans lost in 1918, but he was there long enough to learn Arabic and Spanish and all the other languages he would have needed. Probably even in Tel Aviv, but certainly not in Jerusalem, and so on. The actress was Michal Bat Adam. The actress, I think, is still among the living. The director is not, but she was the wife of Moshe Mizrahi, the director.
Really?
The director, yeah.
Interesting.
What else did you think? There is some discussion in the chat. What did you think of the character? How important is she to the film? What role does she play? Do you like her? Do you find her believable? Do you find her compelling, obnoxious?
I liked her. I thought she was very kind to the young man. I thought she was very gentle. I thought she was very lonely too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she described coming back, you know, having lived on the kibbutz and then leaving the kibbutz, and she was sort of drifting and trying to find what her role. She tried the violin for 10 years, and that wasn't the right thing. So she was looking, she was searching, but, you know, I only saw the first part of I didn't see the second part. So, you know, the most sexual part of it was when he kissed her quickly and then pulled away. And it almost had a feeling like a protective big sister then, you know, who could a little sympathy, because he wasn't getting it so much from his mother. His mother was constantly telling him, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Right.
And he wasn't getting it, you know, from anybody else. And he was somebody who cared about his welfare and, you know, change your clothes, clean up, you know, take a shower, you can sleep here. I mean, I didn't see the second half, so I can't relate to.
I like that word sympathy, because he had a strong mother who cared for him, but you know, when he cried the first day he went to work in the factory and the tears were coming down, I just think he was overwhelmed by so much. I like that.
He's so young.
You know, what's a 15-year-old kid should be in high school?
Yes.
Or
Well, he was, yeah.
you know, rather than having to work in this horrible job in the shop and being abused. I mean,
Yeah.
His dreams
Well,
were broken as a person. He had dreams of going to school and everything, and then your father dies and you have to take over a new role, and you want to do that for your mother, but you also have your own life, and he has to discover what's important to him, or to ignore what he really wants and do it for your mother, which is very hard.
yeah, and he doesn't belong anywhere. I mean, he said yes, he goes. There the girls he's seen, and he's gone to parties, he's gone to the beach, but that wasn't him. But I think he feels trapped. He can't get away from this. The books could have been his relief because you can escape in your books.
No,
And he was very bright.
I felt that his
Wendy and then Jody.
His culture, he came from such an entirely different culture where, I mean, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but, you know, in the second half especially, I became very conscious of the sexism in that society and how, I mean, men dominated the culture in and I think that was why the mother, Clara, didn't want to get re-involved again, because the culture sort of promoted abusive relationships and in that particular culture, and I think that was part of Sammy's problem, is that he really didn't know how to treat a woman nicely. He had no model for that, and so that was why he struggled. That was kind of my take on it. So,
and just to add on to that, God, I'm losing my train of thought. But I totally agree with you, Wendy, that it was like a stereotype of a chauvinist pig, and the women follow and everything. And I have to say that I didn't get to the second part. I skimmed through it. Okay, 'cause I saw the whole first part, but the second part I got to where that woman tells him no more, and he goes back to her and says, well, why? And it's like, it's done, it's finished, and he was hurting in his heart because he didn't understand.
But he also hadn't contacted her for 2 or 3 months, and I think she was protecting herself by that.
Okay, see, I missed that, and I didn't understand. Was it wham bam, thank you, ma'am, or you know, something else?
Yeah, well,
but it helped him grow up.
A 25-year-old with a 15-year-old, you know.
Also, the chauvinistic thing, that was one thing that came out to me, because in our family, the men ate the meat. The men had the meat first. And I thought that was interesting. They put that in the film.
She slapped her own daughter.
The daughter, because the daughter asked, why did he get the meat and I don't?
Right.
Yeah, my family was Ashkenazi and my father ate first. I mean, you know, we never ate before he did, and he would finish up and we would still be eating.
So the man that she ended up marrying, the older man at the last half of the movie, what was he? Was he Sephardic?
He was Ashkenazi. He was Ashkenazi, but he spoke Arabic and Ladino as well as Hebrew.
And he told the boy that the boy was a gift. So the boy did feel felt and seen by.
And you know, the son realized that he was in love with the mother. And he said that at the end, and I thought that's pretty that's an intuition of him to see that. And I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth had an interesting question in the chat about, is an Egyptian Jew considered Mizrahi or Sephardi?
Mizrahi.
Depending, the Mizrahis didn't speak Ladino. When the Jews expelled from Spain, one group went down to Morocco and then they spread across North Africa. And by the time they got to Egypt, they mixed with the the Mizrahis.
And a lot of Egyptian Jews then just started in Aleppo in Syria and came down to Egypt. So,
Yeah.
you know, they were sort of a hybrid.
Yeah, the old rabbi at our synagogue, his family was from Aleppo, but they didn't speak Ladino.
They did not.
Yeah, whereas the Syrian Jews that I knew back in '73, they all spoke Spanish. You know, my friend Lavana told me that her mother calls her Luna, Ivana and Moon, and her mother called her Luna, and they're, you know, so on and so forth.
The ones that I knew in Brooklyn who had come from Aleppo, I mean, they spoke English at home, and I think a lot of them spoke Arabic.
They spoke Arabic, but the point is, you have those types of things. I do want to talk a little bit about one or two other issues. Just, you know, to use my bully pulpit, there was a little bit of discussion about the director, Moshe Mizrahi, is actually quite important. If we're going to talk about Sephardic directors, he is, I think, representative of a very early strand in Israeli history of mega successful directors. He spent part of his career in French. Carol put up one or two of the films that he directed, including I Love You, Rosa, and there were a few other. The Rosa name was
I Love You, Rosa.
I saw that.
his films.
Saw that years
and
ago.
His wife was active in some of the films. Michal Baradam, who played the bookseller, the older girlfriend. She was in some of his films, and there are some wonderful interviews with her, as well as old interviews with him. I couldn't find anything in English. So for those of us who speak Hebrew, you can find those very easily. The lead character, Gilal Magor, is of course one of the most important actresses in all of Israeli history.
Yes, and she was such a strong character too.
Yeah.
A strong mother.
Yes.
Would do anything to protect her kids.
Anybody know her most important early career character? So for people who know Israeli film, if I say Batsheva Sozialit, is that a clue? I don't know how many of you would know.
I don't.
Batsheva, the social worker. Beth is thinking.
Was that in Salati?
Yeah,
the one about the Mabarot?
Yeah, that was in
Salak
Salak
Shabati. Did somebody say it's Salak Shabati?
Yeah. So that was Salak Shabati. So Gilal Magor was in that film.
In that film, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I only remember scenes out of it, but I don't remember her.
Right. So, but the point is, she's a very important Israeli actress. Summer Alavia. She was in a couple of Holocaust-related films, and you know, again, the top of the top in those days, and she's still, I think, among the living. In terms of the Sephardic versus Mizrahi, today there's an awful lot of debate about whether Sephardim and Mizrahim should be lopped together. I don't know that in the 1970s, and certainly not in the 1940s, people worried too much about that distinction as being real. The Ashkenazim were in such a position of traditional power that you know, everybody else was lopped together no matter what. Casablanca is a good example. We think about the slum community as being primarily Sephardic, but they're Romanians and Russians and Polish and French speakers from North Africa and God knows whatever else. And so they're all considered to be Sephardim in the terms of the way that we popularly think.
So it was more socioeconomically than.
Well, the point is, I don't know that the man on the street in the 1970s would have worried about arts division between Mizrahi and Sephardi, although they would have been very well aware these people speak Spanish and those people don't. But I don't know that they would have worried about it for the labels. I did make a point about the soundtrack, which I loved. I just thought this was wonderful. I think I sent you the.
I loved it too.
It's beautiful.
And I love the woman singing. Whoever the woman that was singing much of the music was wonderful.
So Yafa Yarkoni
Shoshana Damari.
Shoshana Damari were singing 6 of the songs on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And Carol, do you want to make a pitch for Leah's program?
Yeah, is Yafi Yakoni one of the women, the fiery female women?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, I was going to let Carol make the pitch for the program. Leah's not here.
Yes, so Leah's program on the fabulous fiery females. I know that she covered. I'm pretty sure she covered one of them.
She covered Shoshana Damari already.
Shoshana Damari
And Yafi Yarkoni is coming up.
It's coming
Yafi
up.
Yarkoni
Yeah.
is coming up, and there's
First.
yet another one that will be in August, which is Esther Ofarim. So these are the women. They pretty much, between the 3 of them, they own the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Of the movie.
And it's wonderful to learn more about them separately, although one could say that they're the coming of age, musically speaking, was also part of the early days of Israeli statehood, and then for the next 40 years.
They represented also a Sephardi background or Yemenite or whatever, but they also were the soundtrack of Tel Aviv in the 1940s into the early 1950s. Almost all the music was written before 1946. Beth, I'm going to look at the website, so I'll make the pitch. Let me pull it up first before I share the screen.
While you're doing that, Besame Mucho was there. I know that song.
Besame Mucho.
In the
Yeah.
1940s.
I love that.
Okay, and now that it's open, let me share the screen. So here is the Thursday evenings every other week. The next one is coming up is
This Thursday. Yeah.
Here we go, Yafi Yarkoni. And there's a song sheet, and you can learn some of the songs. Let's see if she's doing any of the songs from the film. Ha'amini Yom Yavo was in the film. And Achinu HaKatan was not. Ein Din Dino is not. Rokeret is not. So she's doing one of the songs that's in the film. In case you're interested, that's Thursday night.
Did Judy Frankel do any of those songs?
It's not her style. I don't know whether she did or did not. And the songs were all in Hebrew. They're not in Ladino. They're not in Judesmo or Spanish. And I actually think that Shoshana Damari had some songs which she did in Arabic, but I'm not sure. I was able to find the piano piece that was on the record. That was Mozart's Piano Sonata number 9 in D major.
Right.
I know that by Shazam, because I asked Leah to listen to the film because she's the piano. Some people know Leah is the director of Kol Nashim Choir. Leah did not listen to the film. I'm sure she would have been able to tell me, oh yes, I played that 3 years ago, whatever. I think that there were 2 or 3 Arabic pieces. One of them, I'm almost positive, was Kulthum, Ya Habibi, oh my friend, but I'm not 100% sure because I couldn't get a good take of it. There was always too much dialogue playing over it. And there is another one by a male singer. I have my thoughts, but I'm not sure who it was. And there was a French piece, but I could not get that one out either.
What the Arabic song? Oh,
Zainab.
I just wanted to say that about the Arabic song, the female singer was definitely, as many of you may know, Kulthum, the famous singer. yeah, Ya Habibi is a very, very famous song that she has. And if you want, I can listen to that Arabic part again. Perhaps I can get something out of it because I know some Arabic singers from Egypt. Yeah, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah, as I said, it sounded to me like Ya Habibi. I felt that it was a little bit too much in the background, but I can't think of anything else it might have been. It was the voice of Kulthum and the words were Ya Habibi and the sound was about the same. So thank you for confirming it. Kulthum would have been heard by Israeli audiences on Friday afternoons and Saturdays because there was no television up to around 68 or so in Israel, and all the Israelis would watch Egyptian movies on the weekends.
At the movie theater?
No, on the television.
Oh, you said there was no
They had no Israeli TV, but they all watched. Yes, Beth is saying the band's visit has a scene where they talk about listening
yeah.
To Kulthum. But that was also part of it. So there's part of the soundtrack of Tel Aviv in those.
I had visited my relatives in Israel in 1967, and they had this black and white TV with very, very poor reception. It was all rabbit ears, and they would sometimes pick up Jordanian, and sometimes, because they lived in Ra'anana, which was fairly close, it was just right after the 6-Day War, so it had been very close to what was still the Jordanian border. So they would get Jordanian TV, and they would get a little, sometimes if the weather was really good, they would get a little bit of Egyptian, but it was a lot of snow. That they thought it was so great that they had a set. It didn't matter if you couldn't hear anything. It was just, we have a TV set. And it was
right, exactly.
It was very
like Shtizzle, like the mom and Shtizzle. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually they, well, now they have, TVs in every room.
Yeah, well, those days up to the 60s, there was a time of the Otzer, the very strong limitation. It was a worker's paradise in some ways. The government limited what you could charge for all sorts of basic things, and everything else
Well,
was.
the funniest was not having, when they didn't have telephone. They lived in a moshav, and there was one phone, and the phone was in the office. And if somebody wasn't there to monitor it, there was no telephone communication.
Yeah, I remember those days too. We had to go upstairs.
If I wanted to visit them, I basically showed up.
Right.
It was like, oh, you're here. How long are you staying? How nice.
Carol knows my aunts Laura and Asya, and one of our friends used to tell the story. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? We have nothing in the house. And then 5 cakes appeared within moments, and the full meal, nothing in the house, and so on. If we told them in advance, there'd be a problem because you couldn't call them and say, well, we were delayed or something.
If you had enough time to send a postcard, they might get it, but.
Ivan, do you have anything to add to our conversation?
Well, kind of earlier, okay. In regards to back with Heyman and I can't remember her name. Sammy's mother. Clara, okay, thanks. Clara, she mentioned that she told Haim, that he couldn't come back anymore. And then he didn't talk to her for like 2 months. And then Sammy goes back and says, hey, go talk to her. And it was just after their house got hit by that ordinance and stuff. So in response to your question, Zainab, right? No. Yes. Yeah, I feel like part of his thing was that, or part of Clara's response to marrying Haim was part survival and also part a little bit of love too. But I feel a lot of it was spurred by that survival. Like, he's got money, he's Ashkenazi, he's got a lot better position than I do at the moment.
And he loved her son.
Yes. And
I
then
think he loved her also.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And then the other thing that for me is kind of getting a new insight to the the environment of 1948, at least in Tel Aviv, because I've been doing some Israeli search for a good portion of my life. I've never actually seen that view from inside Tel Aviv, looking on the British occupation during the mandate, and that was kind of an interesting twist to what I've learned so far about how the British reacted to or acted towards both the refugees or the people actually living in there. And so that was kind of an eye opener.
Well, I did want to mention that this film has everything. It has Ashkenazim versus Sfaradim. It has coming stage. It has the kibbutz. It has a woman basically. She never talked about divorcing her marriage. Just leaving the communal structure both of the community, the commune, and of the marriage, and just hanging out in Tel Aviv. It had labor organization and labor relations. And the Histadrut, which was the labor union for everybody. It was all of the Jewish workers, and there was an Arab section in the Histadrut also, as I recall. But the Histadrut was the power base of Ben Gurion and the Labor Party who came into power. There was also some, you might say, ethnic tension there as well, in that the unions were religious, secular, Eastern European elite Jews that ran the labor unions. You also had recruitment for the Irgun. Now, the translation which they had was a translation of Irgun Tzvai Leumi, and if you didn't know it, you would not have any notion that was the Irgun. That was Menachem Begin's group of militants, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, but there was some recruitment for them. They called them the National Military Organization, which is a translation of Irgun Tzvai Leumi.
Now, why were they terrorists? Why were they considered terrorists?
Menachem Begin said, we're going to fight the British as if there's no Nazis, and we're going to fight the Nazis as if there are no British. This was a period of time in which the British, Ivan called it occupation. The British occupation was very problematic for Jews. The Arab revolt that started in the 1930s. In 1920s, there were things actually were very close to Jabotinsky Day, I think is the end of this Hebrew month. But in the 1920s, there were events. Israelis all know about Tel Hai, Trumpeldor falling in Tel Hai in 1920, and about the attack in Hebron, which eliminated a Jewish community which had been there since probably since Temple times in 1929. And in 1930s, 1936, and so on, there was the Great Arab Revolt, and the British began to put it down, but the British at a certain point threw up their hands. The Peel Commission came in and thought that the only way that they could solve the problem was by partition. This was in 1937. The Peel Commission said there ought to be a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Brits wanted Jerusalem, so there also should be the British mandate controlling a corridor from Jaffa to Jerusalem. What happened, it didn't get past the Brits. There was a alternate plan in 1938. I think the name was Woodhouse. But in 1939, the Brits had a white paper which solved the problem by saying they were not doing anything. The Ashkenazi here would know what Gornish mit Gornish. They weren't going to do anything. And instead, they were going to limit Jewish migration into the British state. So 50,000 people, 75,000 people. It was going to be 25,000 people, but they said because of what's going on in Europe, we'll give another 50,000 over 5 years. So they had 75,000 over 5 years, and they tried to enforce it strictly. 1939, May, no one knew what would start happening in September. And certainly no one knew what would start happening among European Jews and Jews in the rest of the world in the 1940s. Zainab will probably say, oh yes, I saw, what was it called? Zero Return, the Ramadan film.
Oh, I can't.
I can't remember, but did you actually see the film? I was not able to find something with subtitles.
Oh, the movie. Can you please just say again the name of that movie?
I think Zero Return. It was a Ramadan film series about a Tehran representative who helped Jews migrate to Iran in the 1940s.
I can't. Sorry, I can't exactly remember. Sorry about that.
But you do remember there was such a film.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. But the point is, no one knew in 1939 what was going to happen. And the fact that the Brits limited migration was one of the things that the Irgun was unhappy about. So the Irgun blew up the King David Hotel, they blew up bridges, and so on. There was a night of the bridges where they dynamited a couple of bridges all over the country to frustrate British plans. And that was part of the Irgun. There was a reference or two to Arab terrorists as well.
Didn't the Palmach blow up the bridges?
Yeah, Palmach did also.
Yeah, it wasn't just the Irgun. The Palmach was a little bit more, behaving themselves. They were
right, and there was also the Stern Gang.
Of the defense.
But, that was the movie referred to the Irgun Tzvai Le'umi, so I figured I'd mention that.
I'm gonna boogie. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, it's
Bye,
about 9:30. Anybody have some final comments they want to make? I want to talk a little bit about next week's film very briefly. Anybody have any final comments before I talk about next week's film? Okay. Well, so next week.
Thank you. This is really
the film.
It was nice. Thank you. Learned a lot.
Thank you all. I hope you all can join us next week. I will make another pitch. Frank, I think, and Mimi are part of my Torah study on Wednesday afternoons. If you're interested, it's the same Zoom, 5 o'clock our time. On Sunday, I'm giving a talk as part of an Inquisition Remembrance Ceremony. That's Sunday the 19th. It is at 10:30 our time. And next week is the Ganenet, Haganenet, the kindergarten teacher. Have any of you seen the kindergarten teacher? Mimi has, I know. Anybody else? So
The one with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
No.
No,
Arnold
that's a different.
Schwarzenegger is not in any version. There are two versions of
He's
this
not an
film.
Israeli actor.
There are two versions of this film. The one that I want to discuss is the Israeli version, not the American version, although you can watch Maggie Gyllenhaal after that. Maggie Gyllenhaal's film is on Netflix. The Israeli version is on Canopy. The Denver Public Library and dozens of other public libraries have, I think the Los Angeles Public Library has Canopy. Libraries pay a hefty subscription fee, but it's free for us to use. A lot of the university libraries have it also, Canopy. It's also available, I think, for free on Vudu with ads and for $3 if you don't want ads. It is directed by Nadav Lapid, and the main story is about a kindergarten teacher who is enchanted with a 5-year-old whom she believes is a very poetic soul. And I think it talks about the role of culture and what the kindergarten teacher thinks is the role of culture in society, and also talks about her very complicated family life and outlook on things. I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm not 100% sure it's a terribly important film, but it was a bestseller in Israel. And I think it has something to say about how we look at poetry. As I did with the music, I'm going to try to get some of the poetic references dug up from when I showed it to my class when Mimi was in my class. And I guess that's all there is to it. But remember that the one I primarily want to look at is the Israeli version, if you want. I've seen the Maggie Gyllenhaal film. You can see that also afterwards if you want to compare the two. Okay, any final questions anybody has? And remember, the last thing on our docket is Fauda, and you should watch the whole thing from beginning to end, but we're going to concentrate on season 3, episodes 1, 2, and 3. Okay, Ivan, welcome back. Zainab, I'm thrilled that you joined us tonight. Thank you very much for contributing.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed
Maybe
it.
Travis will
Thank
join
you for
us
joining
next
us.
time.
Thank you so
And
much.
let's see, who else is not? Isabel, thank you. It's good to see you here. Maybe you can figure out how to change your name to be your name as opposed to somebody else's name. It
My
shows up.
granddaughter's name, yes.
What?
To my granddaughter's name.
Oh, well, that's important.
I'll switch.
Yeah, that's important. Good. And
Zainab is-
I think Wendy has been with us once or twice before. It's good to see you all. And Jeffrey, I'm thrilled that you have joined us again. Frank?
Yeah, I'm glad I stumbled across this on
Good.
Facebook.
So we'll see you all next
Zainab,
time.
are-
unless I keep it
Next
short.
week.
Yeah. Are there films being made in Iran now?
Yes. Zainab is my Iranian expert.
If you have any question, yeah, I can give you my email. And yeah, I sent the link of that movie named Salesman, and we talked about it. And I
Mhm.
saw that someone else sent the link of A Separation. These two movies are well famous, and we have watched them with Dr. Ward in his class. And there are other movies, other famous directors that if you want, I can introduce them. And many of them have won very famous rewards. And
I was just wondering, under the current regime, are movies being made? Are they allowed to be made now, or?
yeah, they are allowed to be made, but some movie directors just leave the country. But some of them, for instance, Kiarostami was a very famous film director who passed away 4 years ago. But yeah, he was internationally recognized, and he was making his movies inside the country. But those movies didn't represent any political issues. And the same goes for Farhadi. Farhadi's movie also doesn't deal with political issues. But yeah.
Yeah, so as long as they're neutral, then it's okay.
Farhadi,
Yeah.
Zainab knows a lot more than I do, but I'll just say that Farhadi has also made films outside of Iran and in French and in Spanish. And this past year, we talked about in my film class at the University of Wyoming, we talked about Jafar Panahi. One of our students showed how he overcame the prohibition of making a film. Zainab, do you know what he called the film that he made that overcame the prohibition? I don't know the name in Farsi. This is not a film.
Oh, yeah, this is not a film.
This is not a film. He also made a non-film in 2006 called Offside, where he was going to shoot the Iran versus Bahrain, they would call it football, soccer match. But he only shot the women who were prohibited from going inside the stadium, offside.
Okay.
Also, very good. Again, a comment on the system. We saw a number of films that were made over the years. I've shown a number of films that were made by experts, by Iranian people who are not in Iran. So Marjane Satrapi, it's now very dated, but she did a film called Persepolis, also very important.
Interesting.
And there are a number of other, Iran is a very important and very vibrant film community. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody
Thank
else have anything?
Dr. Ward, where can we find the musical that you mentioned, Casablanca?
Casablanca. Type it in and see if you can find it. I don't know if there is a freebie choice, but you can find Casablanca for, well, let me look it up and see what it will cost. I don't think any of the libraries have a copy that's streaming. Israel Film Center has a copy. Amazon has a copy that I think you can stream. Israel Film Center, let's see how much it costs. You can't see this. Let me turn this on.
I'm gonna go. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
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 יש מקום רחוק אחרי הים.
This is on their YouTube site, and it's not the full film. I think you can find it streaming after we turn off. I'm going to see if I can find the or a link where you can stream it.
Okay.
And come back singing all the songs like Beth did.
Right.
Years ago, Carol did most of the work. We screened the Casablanca at the local Jewish community center. And by a stroke of luck, we had one of the actors who was in the original film come and sing some of the songs with us. It was a lot of fun. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.